So, welcome to Norfolk Park Community Garden. We have got comfrey here, which the bees love, and there are some worker bumblebees on here, white-tailed worker bumblebees on here, even though it's a cold, drizzly kind of day. We've got a load of massive comfrey stand here, which is over. A month ago, this was buzzing with bumblebees as well. We've got some later flowers at the back there, some elecampane, the wild sunflower, and we've got these geraniums, First World War geraniums, as they're coming down here. There is some bistort at the back there with the little spiky red flowers, you can see, and that flowers right up until Christmas. The honeybees come over from the apiary and feed on this. There's not a lot else in the garden which is flowering at that time, but the bistort and the ivy, which is surrounding a lot of the garden. There's lots of ivy up in the trees here, up in these sycamores, these mature sycamores, and this is a south facing, so that's really gives out lots of nectar and pollen late in the year. There's some at the back there. There's some feverfew just under the grapes, growing. All wildflowers that are just there. There's also some teasel I see, which is in flower there at the back. A lot of these areas I leave for the wildflowers just to flower, and in the depths of winter I'll go around and mow, but then as the spring and the summer comes on, I leave them alone, leave those areas alone, just to let the wildflowers flower. Moving on swiftly. In the greenhouse we have lots of tomatoes, and we always plant a swathe of flowers to encourage pollinators in. We've got some French marigolds along here, and we've got Californian poppies, as well as obviously tomatoes and the other flowering, fruiting plants. We've also got a few wildflowers on the edge of the orchard here. Behind these trained trees here, you can see the perennial willow herb, which flowers for a very long time. The honeybees and the bumblebees and hoverflies, you can see a few bees on there, in fact, are on those. We have a cranesbill geranium here, a blue cranesbill geranium, which is not only very pretty in the garden and tall growing, so it gets above all the grasses and that, but it flowers over a long period of time as well. Along the top here we've got various flowering trees. We've got the mountain ash, which has got berries on now, but earlier in the year that had masses of frothy flowers on. We've got the blackberries now, which a lot of them have got fruit on, but there's still some flowers on there. There is a Gelder rose, and there's blackthorn in here. So there's loads and loads of flowers throughout the year. We have the Darwini, the bee tree here, which will be flowering in a bit. It's just got some buds on there at the moment, just ready to open. We've got wild roses, dog roses here, which most of those are over now. They've finished flowering. And into the orchard. So we've got all our fruit on the orchard now, but obviously earlier in the spring this was covered in blossom for the bees as they're just waking up out over winter. We leave a few flowering weeds like this one here, which is good for the cinnabar moth, ragwort. and we've planted lavenders, and this is goldenrod, which is just starting to show some colour and coming into flower now, even this late in the season. We've also got knapweed in here, wild strawberry, and daisies, oxide daisies. Got some St John's wort here, which are planted, and sweet woodruff. These little white frothy flowers here. There's a bumblebee on that one there, and there's these yellow ones at the back. There's St John's wort. We've also planted crocuses in this area, so in the early spring. There's one of our pollinators there, just fluttering by. Not many butterflies around today. It's got too cold for them. But there's lots of crocuses that are planted in here. Obviously they're not here now, but in early spring they're for those early pollinators. They're coming out of hibernation. We have a pond down here, down this way, in between the plums. There's some water at the back there. And we've got more feverfew here and ragwort. So there's lots of wildflowers all around the garden, flowering at different times of year, for short petaled flowers as well as long petaled flowers, trumpet type flowers. So the hoverflies as well as the bumblebees with the long tongues can suck the nectar. We don't use any chemicals in the garden, so we're trying to encourage and build up the numbers of the predators as well as pollinators, to keep the predators, to keep the aphids under control, and the pollinators, so we get good fruit, which the plums on these trees speak for themselves, the apples on the trees all speak for themselves, the tomatoes in the polytunnel as well. The bees go in there, especially the bumblebees. They go in, they find their way out. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
You're right. So yesterday when I was out at Wortley Hall Garden, I was going through the hives and I found some queen cells. So luckily the queen was still in there. So I cut off the queen cells, but I noticed that one of them was just about to emerge. So I took it home with me and kept it warm, and I've got her here today. And here she is. Look. So this is a virgin queen, which I'm going to do a split in the hive in a bit, and I will put her in a queen cup like this, so that she can the bees can get used to her and she can get used to the bees. I'll leave it like that for a little while. But she's looking quite vital now and walking around. She's probably wondering where all her bees are. But she probably won't want to go back in now. But lovely black queen. These black bees that we've got at the farm are some bees that we saved from a tree that was cut down about 5 years ago now. A very old ash tree, and managed to save them and put them into a hive, so we've been looking after them, but they are a little bit swarmy. In there, in you go, in you go. So there you go.
Go.
So at the top of the garden here, we've got a strip of calendula, which we leave on just on the border on the edge of here. Some young plants coming up here, which will be late forage, open pollinating daisy-like, orange daisy-like flowers. And on this side, we've got lots and lots of blackberries along here, and all kinds of other trees right on this border. There's a 5-meter strip between here and the footpath. There's a dry stone wall and a footpath on the other side, which we've left as a wildlife corridor. So it goes from one end of the garden right through the orchard right to the other end of the garden. And there are foxes, and we've even had hedgehogs in here, as well as our foragers. We've got hoverflies in here, and bumblebees working these, as well as our honeybees, which the honeybees on a day like today often are stuck in the hive. They're not as hardy as the bumblebees, whereas the bumblebees are out foraging in all weathers. This is why it's vitally important we look after our wild foragers, as well as the honeybees. The honeybees, we can feed them, we can look after them, and we can get them through difficult weather times, whereas the bumblebees and the hoverflies, they visit every flower, and they don't discriminate between different flowers. They will visit every flower, and there will be seeds produced from them. So they're, in some ways, they're far more important than the honeybees. Can you hear that plaintive call?
Mm.
That's a bullfinch. Sounds like a squeaky wheelbarrow. There's a lot of different birds in the garden as well. So, considering this is a day where there's going to be no rain, this is pretty constant rain now.
There is.
I haven't even talked about the flowers that we leave in the veg garden. There's sunflowers over there. There's borage. All sorts.
Where was that?
There's sunflowers over there next to the sweet corn and the squash. We've got a row of sunflowers. And we've got borage that comes up all over the garden, and we leave it as, we consider it as a valuable plant, not for eating but for the pollinators. So we leave it, and we don't call it a weed. We let it be there.
Can I see some poppies at the end as well there?
Yes, there's some opium poppies. Most of them are over now, but there's some opium poppies. There's some wild carrot there for some umbellifers type plants, which are good for the hoverflies. Bringing those in to keep the aphids off. So in amongst these poppies here, these umbellifer type flowers like this, which are very good for hoverflies. In fact, you can see a hoverfly right there. and they can suck the sap from these very short petals type flowers. And we've got the row of, there's a few sunflowers left. Some of them have been eaten off. And we have borage. This is borage just coming up here as well. These sunflowers looking quite sturdy. Cabbage white. They do seem to be a bit hardier. A lot of other. We do get a lot of speckled woodland brown butterflies on this site. But we've also had holly blue. Last year I took lots of pictures where we saw lots of tortoise shells and painted ladies and yeah, lots of different red admirals, peacocks, and lots different ones. Haven't got the weather just at the moment. The peacocks are coming out now. They tend to be a bit later. And we've got patches of nettles that we leave around the edges of the site, especially for tortoiseshell butterflies. So we try and look after our pollinators in this garden.